How's it
How are
going?
you? I'm good. I'm good, thank you.
I'm okay. I'm from Downright Creepy, a horror publication, so it's really great to be able to talk to you. I rewatched
Yeah.
the film yesterday, and it's so much
Oh,
fun.
you did.
Congrats on it. One
Thank
thing
you.
I noted after watching it was how exciting it was to get twice the Ben O'Toole performance. So I wanted to ask you about that, and I'm very interested in sort of this dual role that you had in this film. If you could talk about that.
Yeah, it was actually probably one of the things that um, enticed me the most about this project. It's actually funny, like it sounds really egotistical. I just couldn't wait to act with myself. That's not what I'm saying, even though it sounds like that. But it's like I think every actor kind of, because you see it. I think Us had just come out. Jordan Peele's Us had just come out when we started shooting this, and that was kind of really cool to watch. And I mean, I defy any actor that doesn't want to know if they could pull this off. This sort of split. Jake Gyllenhaal's done it. It's a lot of anyway. So I thought this would be a really interesting challenge because it also was very different to something like Split. M. Night Shyamalan's Split, where McAvoy, all of McAvoy's different characters had different accents. They were completely different people. Whereas the Conscience is still Rex. He's just like a more reckless Rex. He's that voice in our head, kind of like the devil on the shoulder, saying like, you should like shoot him in the dick. It's like stuff that you go, hey, where'd that come from? So he's kind of the embodiment, the physical embodiment of those thoughts. So that was kind of really cool. And I think probably one of the more interesting things in the story is when those two roles somewhat flip, when Rex finally gets cut down and the Conscience now kind of takes the moral high ground, saying you've got to save the girl, and Rex is the one going, nah, fuck that, I'm out of here. It's like, we're not doing, no way, absolutely not. We went back for the girl last time, and look at what happened. Mm-hmm. And so then Rex becomes the more morally corrupt one, and the Conscience becomes, more of a healthier conscience. So I felt charting those two journeys was going to be really interesting and a lot of work. But I mean, if you can, I mean, that's kind of, you got to push yourself, you got to challenge yourself. Otherwise, safe shit's so boring.
Right. Yeah, you noted. Right.
Yeah.
You noted how much of a challenge it was. So how did you even begin to tackle that and sort of like organizing the ways in which you were going to portray these characters?
So I was really lucky. Early days, I got asked by both the director and the producers if there was anybody in particular that I worked well with, or that I that was really close to me. And an actor called Josh Brennan, he's one of my best mates. He happened to be available at the time. I reached out to him and said, there's this thing, blah blah blah. Would you be interested? It's not the most glorious of roles. You're kind of just going to be, ultimately, you're going to be helping me, really. And he very selflessly agreed to do that, and is ultimately quite responsible for, for the outcome of Rex, the performance that we ended up getting, because he would help me build the character, and he would play the Conscience when I was playing Rex, and I could focus on Rex's problems. And he would watch me and mirror me when I was playing Conscience and focusing on the Conscience's problems and the Conscience's obstacles. And it was just a process, and running things by the director, going away, he would give us the time to kind of squirrel away and work on these scenes, and then come back and basically have to read them twice. And it was, I mean, it sounds like a cop-out, but it was one of those things. It's like, we're just going to have to do it in the moment, and hopefully it works. I mean, even when we were doing it, there's a thing as well where I was like, not a lot of people have done just a subtle difference between two characters, if that makes sense. Like they speak the same, they have the same, they're the same person entirely. Like normally they've got a different accent, they're a child, they're an older woman, whatever it is mentally they go to. And so there was a fear in my mind there where I'm like, all right, is there a reason nobody's really done this before? Is it because it doesn't work? Right. But fortunately, it was enough of a difference that it did work, I think. So
yeah, absolutely. I think one other thing that really works and also is part of the duality that's happening in the movie is the balance between comedy, like Black comedy, and the horror element. So it must have been good to have someone to play off of for both of those things.
Oh, Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And having everybody in the room at all times, like we had the writer and producer and director, everybody's there the whole time, and we're all kind of, we had our lead editor there the whole time as well during shooting. So, you know, all of it at every step of the way, there was never going to be, you know, we all knew what every choice we made was an educated one, which was kind of cool. You know, you're not always afforded that. Sometimes you shoot it and then you send it off into editing land and it comes back and you go, that's not the movie we made. Shit.
Right.
Oh God. But yeah, I think we're really fortunate with this one in that, you know, and that being the focus really as well, the relationship between those two, and that being where a lot of the comedy stems from, and seeing it from their perspective, you know, going on their journey. It really afforded you a lot, and it makes it, I think, it's a unique take on what could potentially be an exhausted genre. It's not, but sometimes you see a horror film and go, far out, man.
Sure, yeah.
You know what I mean? You're like, well, you're not offering anything new. Why? Who made this?
Mhm.
Anyway, sorry, that's not a
Yeah.
dig.
And no, it's okay. I guess my last question would be, how did you reach into this character and prevent it from being, you know, sort of this one-dimensional thing? And what did you find in Rex to do that?
I think the thing I focused on primarily was that the conscience was a physical embodiment of Rex's PTSD from his time in Afghanistan,
Mhm.
and so it's not something we necessarily. It's if we ever get to make a sequel, it's been discussed that we'll probably explore the origins and the birth of the conscience and where he really came from, and what sort of, you know, what particular episode to cut doesn't agree. But you know, like what sort of, you know, what moment it was. But in order to deal with the horrors of the world and ideally the horrors of what he was asked to do and the atrocities he had to commit, he created this conscience that would kind of make these situations a little more morally ambiguous. So he wasn't necessarily the bad guy, even though he very much was, et cetera, et cetera. You know, convincing him he's the hero of the scenario when he's not. And it brings on this action man persona like we see in The Bank. So I think the way to make it three-dimensional for me was to keep it steeped in real trauma. You know, like it's come from a real place of trauma. This outlook on life, this approach to things, you know, which at any point, and as well, I mean, you know, it's one of those things, knowing that the conscience is performing for Rex as well. You know, it'd be interesting to see the conscience in a room by himself when he's not performing for somebody.
Mhm.
You know, Rex is the one that isn't performing and he's a lot more subdued, whereas the conscience is the performer. You know, he's the one that would love to tap dance on the corpse of his enemies, you know. So knowing that it's the character performing and not the actor performing as well, I think, you know, characters perform when they're insecure. I don't know, you know, et cetera, et cetera. We could talk for ages, but I guess keeping it steeped in that, the real world of it being traumatic, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah, well, that's really fascinating. It's a great performance, and congrats on the
Thank you.
film. And thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for taking the time.
Danielle, thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.